Keir Starmer just resigned as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. This is not a rumour. This is not speculation. This is happening right now. The leader of the Labour government, the man who promised stability and competence, has just walked away from number 10 Downing Street. Nigel Farage is celebrating. The opposition is in chaos. The markets are reeling, and Britain is waking up to a political earthquake that nobody saw coming. The resignation letter has been delivered, the announcement has been made, and the entire British political system is now in absolute freefall. You need to understand exactly what led to this moment, why Starmer made this stunning decision, and what comes next for a country that's just lost its Prime Minister. Without warning, the news broke less than an hour ago, and Westminster is still trying to process what just happened. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, has resigned from office effective immediately. The official statement from number 10 came without warning, without the usual advanced briefings to journalists, without any of the careful stage management that normally accompanies major political announcements. 1 minute, Starmer was Prime Minister, dealing with the mounting crises that have plagued his government. The next minute, he was gone. The resignation letter was brief and formal, citing the inability to command the confidence necessary to continue in office. But those dry official words cannot capture the absolute chaos this decision has unleashed across British politics. The timing of this resignation is staggering. Just days ago, Starmer was publicly insisting he had no intention of stepping down, that he remained committed to delivering his government's agenda, that the opposition's calls for his resignation were politically motivated nonsense. His ministers were backing him. Labour MPs were rallying around him. The party machinery was in full defensive mode, trying to weather the storms of controversy and criticism, and then suddenly it all collapsed. Something changed in the last 24 hours, whether it was private polling showing catastrophic numbers, a rebellion within his own party that couldn't be contained, or a personal decision that he simply couldn't continue. We don't know yet. But the result is the same. Starmer is done, the government is leaderless, and Britain is facing a constitutional and political crisis of historic proportions. The immediate reaction from opposition parties has been swift and celebratory. Nigel Farage released a statement within minutes of the resignation being announced, calling it a victory for the British people and a repudiation of Labour's failed governance. He didn't hold back, describing Starmer's tenure as a disaster from start to finish and arguing that his resignation proves Reform UK has been right all along about the incompetence of the political establishment. Farage is positioning this as vindication, as proof that the challenges he's been making against Starmer weren't just political theatre, but legitimate criticism that has now been validated by Starmer's own decision to quit. The celebration in Reform UK circles is unrestrained. They see this as their moment, their chance to reshape British politics. The Conservative Party is also moving quickly to capitalise on this development. Senior Tories are calling for an immediate general election, arguing that Labour has lost all mandate to govern and that the British people deserve a chance to choose new leadership. They're framing Starmer's resignation as the inevitable result of broken promises, failed policies, and a fundamental inability to handle the challenges of governing. Some Conservative MPs are barely containing their glee, having spent months attacking Starmer and now seeing him brought down. Others are more measured, recognising that political crises can be unpredictable and that celebrating too much while the country is in turmoil can backfire. But the overall Conservative message is clear. Labour has failed, Starmer has quit, and it's time for a change of government. Inside the Labour Party, the mood is reportedly one of shock, anger and recrimination. Most Labour MPs were not given advance warning of Starmer's decision. They learnt about their leader's resignation the same way the public did, through breaking news alerts, pages and emergency broadcasts. The WhatsApp groups are exploding with messages ranging from disbelief to fury to panic about what happens next. Some MPs are defending Starmer, arguing that he was brought down by unfair media coverage and relentless opposition attacks. Others are criticising him for abandoning ship and leaving the party in chaos. And everyone is asking the same question: who leads Labour now, and how do they possibly recover from this disaster? The constitutional mechanics of what happens next are clear in theory, but messy in practice. When a Prime Minister resigns, the monarch must appoint a new one. Normally, this would be the deputy or another senior figure from the governing party who can command the confidence of Parliament. But Labour is now thrown into an internal crisis about who that person should be. Do they quickly rally around a unity candidate to provide stability? Do they have a leadership contest to democratically choose Starmer's successor? And can whoever takes over actually govern, or will they face immediate demands for a general election? These questions need answers fast, because Britain cannot function without a functioning government. The markets reacted with immediate volatility. The pound dropped sharply as currency traders processed the news of political instability at the highest level of British government. Stock markets are fluctuating wildly as investors try to figure out what this means for economic policy, regulatory stability, and the overall business environment. The Bank of England has issued a brief statement expressing confidence in Britain's institutional stability. But that kind of reassurance only does so much when the Prime Minister has just resigned in the middle of multiple ongoing crises. International investors are watching nervously, reassessing their exposure to British assets and wondering whether this is an isolated political event or a sign of deeper systemic problems. The media is in absolute overdrive trying to get answers about why this happened now. Journalists are calling every contact they have in government, in the Labour Party, in Westminster, trying to piece together the behind-the-scenes story that led to this moment. Was there a final straw, a specific event or revelation that made Starmer's position untenable? Was there a confrontation with senior party figures who told him his time was up? Did polling show Labour headed for electoral catastrophe if he remained? The official statement gives nothing away, but the details will emerge. They always do. And when the full story comes out about what really brought down Keir Starmer, it's going to be explosive. The personal toll on Starmer must have been immense for him to make this decision. Prime Ministers don't resign lightly. The job is the pinnacle of political ambition, the role that politicians spend their entire careers working toward. To walk away from it, especially after less than a full term in office, represents either a catastrophic loss of support or a personal breaking point where the pressures became unbearable. Reports are emerging that Starmer looked exhausted in recent weeks, that the constant crises were taking a visible toll, that he was working impossible hours, trying to manage situations that kept spiralling out of control. Whether this resignation is a political calculation or a personal necessity, it represents the end of Starmer's career as a major political figure. The immediate political vacuum is dangerous for Britain. The country faces serious challenges that require governmental leadership, economic pressures, international tensions, domestic policy crises. All of these issues need someone in charge making decisions. With Starmer gone and his replacement not yet determined, there's uncertainty about who has the authority to make major decisions. The civil service continues to function, and government operations don't stop, but the political leadership that sets direction and makes tough choices is now in flux. This creates risks, both in terms of delayed decisions on urgent matters and in terms of other political actors trying to exploit the chaos for their own advantage. International allies are watching this development with concern and confusion. Britain is a major player in NATO, a key partner in European security despite Brexit, and an important ally to the United States. When the British Prime Minister suddenly resigns, it creates uncertainty for all those partnerships and relationships. Foreign leaders who are dealing with Starmer now don't know who they'll be dealing with next. Diplomatic initiatives in progress are thrown into question. International meetings and summits that Starmer was scheduled to attend now face awkward questions about who will represent Britain. The country's international standing takes a hit every time there's this kind of political instability. The question of what happens to Labour's policy agenda is now entirely up in the air. Everything the government was working on, every bill in Parliament, every initiative being developed, all of it is now uncertain. Does a new Labour leader continue with Starmer's approach, or do they pivot to something different? Do they try to distance themselves from Starmer's failures while maintaining party unity? The policy paralysis this creates is significant. Civil servants working on government initiatives don't know whether to proceed or wait for new direction. Ministers are in limbo, uncertain whether they'll keep their jobs under new leadership. The entire governmental apparatus is frozen, waiting to see what comes next. Nigel Farage is wasting no time in pressing his advantage. Beyond his initial celebratory statement, he's already given multiple media interviews positioning Reform UK as the alternative Britain needs. He's arguing that the collapse of Starmer's government proves the entire political establishment is broken, that traditional parties cannot deliver what the country needs, and that only Reform UK offers a genuine alternative to failed policies and weak leadership. Whether this message resonates broadly enough to translate into electoral success remains to be seen. But Farage clearly sees this moment as a historic opportunity to break through and establish Reform UK as a major political force. The speculation about who might replace Starmer as Labour leader and Prime Minister is already intense. Various senior Labour figures are being mentioned as potential candidates. Some are establishment figures who would represent continuity and stability. Others are more radical voices who might try to shift Labour's direction significantly. Each potential candidate has different levels of support within the party and different relationships with various factions. The jockeying for position is already happening behind the scenes, with allies of different potential leaders making calls, counting votes and trying to build coalitions. This internal party warfare is happening while the country watches, further damaging Labour's image. The constitutional experts are being called upon to explain the processes and precedents for this situation. While prime ministers have resigned before, each situation is unique and the modern media environment makes everything more visible and immediate. The King will need to appoint a new Prime Minister, but that appointment should go to someone who can command the confidence of the House of Commons. If Labour can quickly unite behind a single candidate, that person becomes Prime Minister. If they can't, if there's a prolonged leadership battle, or if it becomes clear that no Labour figure can command parliamentary confidence, then the pressure for a general election becomes irresistible. The public reaction is mixed and still forming. Some voters are expressing relief that Starmer is gone, feeling he was ineffective and that his resignation opens the door for better leadership. Others are angry that the government they voted for has collapsed, feeling betrayed by the chaos and instability. Many are simply confused, trying to understand what this means for them and for the country. The opinion polls conducted in the immediate aftermath show wild swings as people process this news and adjust their views. The only consistent finding is that trust in political institutions has taken another serious hit. The historical parallels to previous prime ministerial resignations are being drawn by political analysts. But this situation has unique elements that make direct comparisons difficult. When previous PMs have resigned, there's usually been a clear narrative about why. A lost vote of confidence, a policy disaster, a personal scandal, something concrete that explains the departure. Starmer's resignation, at least based on the official statement, seems to be about a more general inability to continue effectively. That vagueness is fueling intense speculation about what the real reasons are. The full story will eventually emerge, but in the meantime, the information vacuum is being filled with theories ranging from plausible to outlandish. The impact on ongoing parliamentary business is immediate and significant. All government legislation essentially goes into holding pattern until there's clarity about new leadership and direction. Opposition parties can use this chaos to push their own agendas and demand concessions. The normal functioning of Parliament is disrupted by the uncertainty at the top. Prime Minister's questions, that weekly ritual of parliamentary accountability, now faces the awkward question of who actually answers the questions. Whoever serves as acting Prime Minister or caretaker leader faces the unenviable task of defending a government they may not fully control and policies they may not have created. The economic consequences are starting to manifest beyond just market volatility. Business leaders are expressing concern about the policy uncertainty this creates. Major investment decisions are being put on hold until there's clarity about who will lead the government and what direction they'll take. International trade negotiations are complicated by not knowing who has the authority to make commitments on behalf of the British government. The economic cost of political instability is real and measurable, and it's already accumulating. Every day without clear leadership is a day when economic decisions are delayed and opportunities potentially lost. Inside number 10 Downing Street, the mood must be surreal. The building that serves as both the Prime Minister's office and residence is now occupied by a leader who's resigned but not yet been replaced. The staff who work there, from senior political advisors to civil servants to support personnel, are all facing uncertainty about their futures. Some will stay on to serve the next Prime Minister, others will leave with Starmer. The institutional knowledge and relationships that make government function are being disrupted just when stability is most needed. The physical space of power is now occupied by a ghost government. The opposition strategy going forward is becoming clearer. They're not just celebrating Starmer's departure, they're using it as evidence for their broader arguments about why their party should govern instead. The Conservatives are arguing this proves Labour can't be trusted with power. Reform UK is arguing this proves the entire establishment is broken. Smaller parties are making their own cases for why the next election should produce a different outcome. Everyone is positioning for whatever comes next, whether that's a new Labour leader trying to govern or a general election that gives voters a fresh choice. The media narrative around Starmer's legacy is already being written, and it's not kind. Commentators are describing his premiership as a failure, a brief tenure marked by broken promises, policy disasters, and an inability to handle the pressures of the office. The few achievements his government managed are being overshadowed by the dramatic nature of his departure. History may eventually offer a more nuanced assessment, but the immediate verdict is harsh. Starmer came in promising to be different, to restore competence and stability, and he's leaving with his government in ruins and his party in crisis. The international media coverage is portraying Britain as politically unstable in ways that damage the country's reputation. Headlines around the world are focused on chaos, crisis, and uncertainty. Countries that look to Britain as a model of stable democratic governance are reconsidering those assumptions. Rivals and adversaries are highlighting British political turmoil as evidence of Western democratic weakness. The soft power and international prestige that Britain depends on for influence in world affairs takes a hit every time there's this kind of dramatic political upheaval. The question of early elections is now dominating political discussion. Opposition parties are demanding them, arguing that Labour has lost any mandate to govern and that the public deserves a say. Labour, or at least some voices within Labour, are resisting, arguing that they should be allowed to choose new leadership and continue governing. The constitutional position is that there doesn't have to be an election just because the Prime Minister changes, but the political pressure can make that constitutional nicety irrelevant. If enough people believe an election is necessary, if the polls show overwhelming public support for one, then resisting becomes politically untenable. The process of selecting Starmer's replacement is now Labour's most urgent challenge. If they move too quickly, they risk choosing someone who hasn't been properly vetted and who might face immediate challenges. If they move too slowly, they leave the country in limbo and give the opposition more ammunition to demand elections. Finding the right balance between speed and legitimacy is incredibly difficult, especially when the party is traumatised by Starmer's sudden departure and divided about the best path forward. Different factions will back different candidates, and those divisions could tear the party apart if not managed carefully. The potential candidates for Labour leader each bring different strengths and weaknesses. Some have more government experience but are tied to Starmer's failed policies. Others are fresher faces who could offer a clean break but lack the experience to hit the ground running as Prime Minister. Some are more acceptable to the party's left wing. Others to centrists. None of them has an obvious path to uniting the party and commanding immediate confidence from Parliament and the public. Whoever emerges will inherit an incredibly difficult situation, and their leadership will be defined by how they handle this crisis in their first days and weeks. Nigel Farage continues to dominate media coverage, using Starmer's resignation to promote his vision for Britain's future. He's not just criticising what failed under Labour, he's offering an alternative narrative about Brexit benefits being unrealised, immigration control being necessary, and traditional values being important. Whether voters buy this message in large enough numbers to make Reform UK a governing party remains uncertain, but there's no doubt that Farage has momentum right now. He's the politician everyone wants to hear from, the voice that seems to understand the frustrations that led to Starmer's downfall. The Conservative Party's positioning is more complex than simple celebration. They need to appear ready to govern while not seeming callous about national instability. They need to criticise Labour's failures while offering credible alternatives. They need to unite their own fractured party around a message that can win the next election whenever it comes. The opportunity Starmer's resignation creates for the Conservatives is enormous, but so are the challenges of capitalising on it effectively. Internal Conservative divisions that were papered over while attacking Labour may now resurface as different factions push different strategies. The broader question about British political culture is now unavoidable. How did we get to a point where prime ministers can't complete terms in office? Why does the political system seem to chew up and spit out leaders with such regularity? What does it say about the health of democracy when governments collapse and leaders resign in chaos? These aren't just academic questions. They go to fundamental issues about whether the current political system is working, whether reforms are needed, and whether Britain can provide the stable governance that complex modern challenges require. The impact on ordinary people's lives is what ultimately matters most. Political drama in Westminster can seem remote from daily concerns about jobs, bills, healthcare and education. But leadership instability affects all of those things. It affects economic confidence, which affects employment. It affects government's ability to make and implement policy, which affects public services. It affects Britain's international standing, which affects trade and prosperity. The costs of this political chaos will be paid by regular people who just want their country to be well governed. The coming days will be absolutely crucial for determining what happens next. Labour must decide how to choose new leadership. The King must determine who he can properly appoint as Prime Minister. Parliament must decide whether a new Labour leader can govern or whether elections are necessary. The public must form opinions about what they want to happen. All of these decisions will be made under intense pressure with limited time and with the eyes of the world watching. The stakes could not be higher. Starmer's resignation letter will be analysed for any hints about what really prompted this decision. Every word will be scrutinised for hidden meanings or subtle accusations. The circumstances of his final hours in office will be reconstructed through leaks and briefings. The competing narratives about why this happened will battle for dominance. Was he pushed out by party rebels? Did he jump before he was pushed? Did personal factors play a role? The truth matters because it will shape how history remembers this moment and what lessons future leaders draw from Starmer's failure.